So hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today it is a very special day in the fact that we are doing another event. So it's great fun. If you have no idea what you've walked into, or you're expecting Julie or Mazel, I'm sorry, you've got me today. We have to take it in turns.
We're still here. We're still here.
Yeah, they're still here. Like they'll come in occasionally just to sort of make sure I'm not doing anything too dramatic, But it's all good. So if we just go through, you can see that we have two amazing guests today. What we officially have going on is we have Antti and project operations, where he's talking about actually this big change that happened. Microsoft have changed our world a little bit again. PMA has disappeared, PSA has disappeared, this new project operations thing has turned up, and nobody really knows what they did. So he's going to absolutely tell us everything about what on earth they've changed to the world. And then Linus has come in because we needed to give our BC side some love. We needed to actually learn a bit more about it. So bless his heart, is here today, feeling a little bit worse for wear, but has stormed through like a full-on trooper.
You got this, Linus.
You are?
I said you got this, Linus.
Exactly, he's got it. He's rocking through the world. This is his dedication to the cause. And then Mazel is coming in at the end to talk about our favourite feature, because this month, where we're getting to the end of the wave, things like that, as normal, Microsoft aren't really doing any new releases or anything like that. So we're going to talk about our favourite and probably not so favourite things, I like to be a bit sarcastic, of what's happened this year. So there are a few other things. We have a special announcement that is coming out, and I'm sorry, it might upset some of you, but we have to go on. And then outside of that, we're going to talk about the forms, the social, how to follow us, how to make sure you're keeping up to date with everything, and what's happening next month, because there's a lot happening next month. You will find out. So I will hand over to our lovely queen to talk about the big announcement.
For those who don't know, which is probably a lot of people, because I haven't been telling a lot of people, I am actually pregnant. So I'm due in September, mid-September. So as we go along, or at least from September onwards, I'm going to be taking a little bit of a step back for at least 6 months whilst I give birth and I learn that I will never sleep again. And as a result, we decided we needed to diversify, bring on a little bit more help. And we have found from the BC versus FinOps little showdown that we had in our first one, we have found the lovely Paul. So who's going to come in, step up and try and help out a little bit more. And now we have our token male in our org team. So welcome, Paul.
It's no longer just the one in your belly.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We haven't got him started yet on consulting, though, that being said. But, as soon as he's out, I'll get him started on, making sure we keep up with the latest. We'll get him started on Power Platform.
Yeah, we hope you are going to join us in that 6 months, Julia.
Oh, no, I'll try to join as much as I can. Paul, why don't you give us a little bit of a hello and tell us all about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Well, hello, everyone. Diversifying by choosing a middle-aged white male to join the board. So ticking all the diversification boxes. Middle-aged, I've probably done myself a bit of a disservice then, but never mind. So I've been dealing with Dynamics for about 9 or 10 years now. From end user through consultant, a bit of architecture, and a bit of a more of a practice lead management kind of role now. So I've been quite a while wanting to get involved in more of the ERP communities. As soon as Kayla mentioned it quite a few months back that they were kicking this off, I was quite keen to get involved. So as soon as the opportunity came up, I jumped at it to get involved. So temporary, and I don't know if this is what Kayla was referring to. It was sad news, whether it's sad news that you've got me or sad news that Julie's leaving or both. Trying to see how it goes.
It's debatable.
He's temporary. No. Don't try not to protest and kick off. No, any petitions together to get me removed. Well, I'll be going soon. Don't worry. So.
No, you won't. Just because I come back doesn't mean anything.
No. And can I just say, there's two things to this, right? Without Julia, there would not be an ERP user group. She literally was the instigating brain behind all of this. So we all owe her a massive, massive amount for giving everyone else the courage and also the determination to do this.
Absolutely.
Fun fact.
Absolutely. So don't be surprised if we dig you out, Julia.
I'm not disappearing. I'm just having a baby. Surely it can't be that bad. And all the people who have had babies before are going to be like, oh, yes, I can.
Multitask at least a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking I'm going to have 6 months off. I've never had 6 months off. I've never had more than a week off.
I don't even know if it's going to be off, Julia.
Yeah. So, on that note, just because I'm conscious of time, we have to now hand over to the amazing Antti, because he is coming in to blow everyone's mind a little bit. So, welcome, Antti. Our amazing.
It is my favorite topic.
With one of our favorite presenters as well.
Exactly.
No pressure. Kayla chose the topic, by the way. Kayla chose the topic. Yeah. So thanks for having me. I mean, really fantastic news, Julia. Congratulations on the baby, and I guess Paul. I guess congratulations on the promotion. Would that be a promotion or a temporary promotion? I don't know. Either or, yeah. So we have about 30 minutes to discuss a topic that I think I could have a monologue on this for a few days, like a filibuster. I guess like before I get started, because we have 30 minutes, there's lots of angles that I could cover when it comes to project operations, and I know that some of you know project operations extremely well. Some of you know it fairly well. I don't know if we have people here who don't know project operations at all. So what we could do, kind of, and feel free to unmute yourself, Julia, or is that no?
If someone, we have enough people here. I can unmute everyone.
Okay. So I mean, I usually what I do is I kind of run through not too many slides, a few, just to give an idea of what is project operations, and then what usually people want to see is what is sort of the end-to-end process. So how do we create contracts for our customers and run projects in project operations, and how do consultants log time, that kind of stuff, and how do we invoice? So that's usually what I do. So I'd actually, if that's something that you're interested in, give a thumbs up in chat, or like those emojis or whatever we have in Teams these days. Another option is that I could talk a bit more about deployment. And really the third option is I could do a really, I think it's interesting, a deep dive on how that new project for the web piece actually works, and how that, what the technical stuff behind that is, and how those sort of changes that we do in project planning, where they actually go, and how extensibility works around that. So that could be a third topic. And because we have a fairly dynamic group, that's why I'm, encouraging, you can just, for me, it's fine if you unmute yourselves and ask questions or comment. So do you want to hear more about the project planning in-depth technical, or the end-to-end process, or deployment?
Definitely not deployment.
Not deployment?
Because it's going to be so much nicer when they sort themselves out. So at the moment, it's all fake news, and it makes it look a bit ugly.
I'll talk about the end-to-end process, because I think we have ERP people here, and you guys are used to, from F&O point of view, you're used to PMA, and that has, it's still a valid option there, but that has sort of changed when we bring in Dataverse / customer engagement. So I'm going to say CE and Dataverse, they're synonymous when I talk about them. So I'll run through a few slides, and just, again, feel free to interrupt me and ask questions. We're not that many people. Oh, here's that deployment stuff. I got to hide that really quick because Kayla didn't want to see this. Come on. So let's close out of here, and let's close out of LCS, and let me share my screen.
Oops. Yep. there we go.
So here we go. So I'm not going to
It
talk
makes
about
me
myself.
so proud seeing you in FinOps. I just feel so proud about it.
Yeah. So before I really get started, I just want to say, like, if a couple of years back, if someone would have said that you're going to present for an ERP user group, I would have said, no, I'm not. I got absolutely no business presenting there. And then what happened is Microsoft said, goodbye PSA, welcome project operations. Like, I want to be an ERP person, I guess, or a semi-ERP person or something. I don't know. I have an identity crisis. So I got these like flashy badges that make me feel, more confident and better, and about myself. And it's missing an F&O badge. Maybe we'll see that someday. I don't know. It kind of let's see how passionate I'll get about finance and operations. It's definitely a nice professional challenge for me. So really through those, kind of to lay the baseline and some really high level basics stuff is project operations is really, it is an end-to-end professional services automation application. So what does that mean? Well, it means that project-based businesses and project-centric organizations need a business application, generally need a business application where they can plan their projects. They can have a place of time entry for their consultants. They can invoice their milestones. They can invoice their, in general, invoice their customers for, those milestones and their TN, time and material based work. They will need a financial backend, with their general ledger and accounts payable, accounts receivable, and that stuff. So that's really what project operations is for. It competes against products like Salesforce's, like Salesforce, for example, Oracle's NetSuite, and Workday. Those are really like the three, I'd say, worst competitors for project operations. So if you do implementations around project operations, those are the competitors that you're gonna sort of meet. They're same but different. And what's really changed in the past exactly 1 year is how this entire business applications architecture has evolved. So those of you that come from F&O know that we have, SCM, we have commerce, finance, and then we've had in that product of finance and operations as a whole, we've had this module called project management and accounting, where we've been able to run projects, have expense entries, time entries, yada yada yada, that kind of stuff. And I just want to be absolutely clear that still remains. Classic PMA remains if you run, F&O only. It's nothing changes really on that front. And I also just want to point out, I'm not. My background is not with F&O, so it is with CRM. So don't ask me classic PMA questions. I won't be able to answer those. I've never used it in my life beyond submitting time entries, actually. So my own history is with project service automation, and then through that, in project operations. So I'm a CRM person at heart. So project operations is really built on three totally different products: PSA, what's now deprecated, Dynamics 365 Finance, classic PMA, and Project for the Web. Hey, someone's cheering for me. That's awesome. And Project for the Web, which is that project management tool. So it is really combining three very different products into a single unified platform. What does it mean, unified? Well, it means that this is actually the first tool, or I argue the first tool on the Dynamics 365 platform that is now a single homogeneous product. So we used to have, CE, we used to have F&O and flimsy integrations and whatnot, but this is now this forms a single platform. It is, like I said, it suits a variety of roles. What is the actual reality behind what it suits is, I guess, depends on the scope of that implementation. I'm going to come back to that in just a bit, but it really is tailored for those roles that professional services organizations, consultancies usually have. So how do we get it then? So there's three different, so that it would be very simple. There's actually three different ways how we can get project operations. And the first one is where we have no F&O at all. There's just like no touch points to F&O at all. And that is called a light deployment, which runs on Dataverse. So you can say that air quotes, it runs on CRM. It's pretty much exactly what we had in project service automation with a bunch of new features. So it's where, PSA ended in version 3, project operations starts at version 4. So it's Dataverse only or CE only, which, whatever term you want to use. The other way to get that, which is sort of the hero scenario that Microsoft calls, is that integrated deployment. So with integrated, that's what I mean by that genuine platform story where we have Dataverse and finance and operations, and we have dual write that connects those two. I would argue fairly seamlessly. I think it is a genuine, very seamless integration with dual write. Nevertheless, it is an integration, so they are still two different platforms in a sense. And one thing that you do need to kind of in that integrated story realize that if you need core finance capabilities or core SCM capabilities, those are, even though when you're sort of installing or deploying F&O, you get it all, right? You get it all. But it doesn't mean that you're allowed to use the SCM or the finance features. So you actually need to license finance and supply chain management separately. And with this integrated deployment, one thing to kind of keep in mind is if you're thinking of project operations and you're thinking of finance and the story of a CE and finance and operation systems, who would ever use project operations without having a financial backend? Microsoft is definitely saying that there's potentially could be such scenarios, but I would, bet a beer with anyone that I doubt I'll ever see a scenario where a customer says, "Hey, yeah, we'll take F&O, but we don't need, we don't want to have our GL in F&O." I mean, to me that doesn't sound reasonable. I mean, it sounds strange to me. So you do need to license those F&O capabilities. And the third one, because Microsoft loves to rename products, the third deployment option, which is essentially classic PMAs called stock/production order scenarios. So that's an F&O only deployment. And the game has changed a bit in the sense that for that, you can also just, you can buy ProjOps licenses and only run, F&O and only run this classic PMA, but you won't have access to finance and SCM unless you again license those separately. So those are sort of the deployment considerations to make. I have 3 beautiful slides here that I'm not going to dive deeper into. I think you did get the picture, and we can kind of see how things really look and how the process flows end to end. And by the way, I'm not seeing Teams chat or anything, so do interrupt me if you have any of those questions.
It turns out that somehow I've managed to disable the chat. I don't know how, because there's no button to even do that. But everyone should have the ability to unmute. So if you do have a question, please, at any time, I'm assuming. Sorry, Auntie. Please unmute, or if you raise your hand, we'll know to, when Auntie asks, we'll know to
yes,
pinpoint you. And again, I'm very sorry. I don't know how this has happened, because usually there's an option to turn it on or off, but not today.
It's that Microsoft tenant that you just advertised.
Yeah, the wonderful Microsoft tenant.
Yeah.
That's not working.
All right. So yeah, interrupt if any questions. So I actually want to get rid of and proceed to the next slide. I'll the SKU placemat slide, because I don't want to talk about licensing. But just so you know, ProjOps has that same thing as SCM and finance. It has a base plus attach license model, with the base having to be the most expensive license. So if you would need project operations with finance, for example, for your project accountants, you would need to license them with a finance base, because that's the most expensive base, and then have an attach for project operations. And that said, there is a 20-seat minimum, and that minimum is it has to be ProjOps licenses. You cannot combine the different SKUs in CSP at the moment, so that's a bit awkward, but that's how it is at the moment. And there is no SKU for CE only. So if you're interested in light deployment, you're going to pay $120 a month at a minimum of 20 seats. And you can run PMA only, classic PMA only. You can run integrated, or you can run light. But that's the only license to date that we have. Lots of discussions around that, and I can point you to a vote portal later for a CE only SKU. If we look at what are the data flows and project operations, this is just, I've stolen this from one of the PMs at Microsoft, so not a slide of my own. There's a lot of stuff here. So what we can cover in like 30 minutes or even in an hour is just a brief introduction to how the process works. So there's lots to consider here, and the flow of data through customer engagement to finance and operations, and then back to customer engagement is actually it's actually fairly complicated depending on which areas of the product you are looking at. So with that, if we have time, which we might not have, we can always dive deeper into the project scheduling service, which is essentially that project scheduling engine that handles scheduling, if that is something that you guys are interested in. But for now, what we could do is really just run through the end-to-end process. And let me just put my Teams on another window. The chat is still disabled. So what does this mean if you come from the world of F&O? And we're running in integrated, so not classic PMA only, but an integrated deployment. It essentially means that you, whether you like it or not, you will be forced to work in the wonderful world of CRM. So the wonderful world of a model-driven Power App in customer engagement. Why are you forced to work there? Well, for starters, all of your orders, so your project contracts / orders, those are they're synonymous, so they mean the same thing. All of that is mastered in Dataverse, so that's accessed through the project operations model-driven application on Dataverse. And the same goes for projects. So if you've used classic PMA and you're familiar with F&O, if you try to open up a project, it'll actually bounce over to the model-driven app side. So it'll bounce to this world, and you're handling your projects and your orders on this side of the table. Let me just turn my mouse on and off really quick, because my Bluetooth mouse is being really slow. Here we go. So how do we see that we have an integrated deployment, and what are some of the things how F&O gains presence in the world of a model-driven app or / CRM? It's actually hard to kind of say what this is, because it's a model-driven Power App. It's not customer engagement. Dataverse is the platform. So I guess this could be like project operations on a model-driven app. It's always kind of like, what should I call it? Because there is no official name. But if we look at accounts, this is really where we start seeing F&O present. So for those of you who might have experience in CRM, in CRM, there's no concept of a company. It's just, it doesn't exist. So with project operations integrated, we're actually getting legal entities into our into the CRM side. And we have to define things such as, customer groups and relationship types and all these kinds of things that really weren't like mandatory before, but now they are when we're doing integrated. A big question that we have in projects is, which is the master for accounts? Is it the Dataverse side, or is it the F&O side? because this is that little bugger that always drives people crazy. The account number, how do you set it? Do you have a different, specific way of setting it? So where's it actually does make a difference where your account master is, F&O or CE. But enough babbling about those nuances. Let's go over and create a new project contract. So what I want to do is I want to sell a consultancy project to a company called A Lorem Ipsum. And I'm creating a contract for them. So I'm creating a contract for consultancy, and then I'm creating a project, and then I'm going to actually resource that and staff that project and deliver that project. So let's say this is F&O for A Lorem, and I do need to add this little thingy called a product price list, and I'm just going to save and close. And the way that I can define what I'm actually going to do. So am I delivering fixed price or am I delivering time and material will be defined on my contract lines. This is a bit slow due to three different things. First off, I'm sharing on Chrome on Teams, which always makes it slower. The second is it's an integrated deployment, so saving takes a bit longer with dual write. And the third thing is I'm running a T2 in the background, so it's not the fastest possible. All right, so we have our contract set. And now what I actually want to do is I want to define that this contract is for time and material based work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an order line. And on that order line, I will say that this is just a TM order line with a building method of time and material. And I'll leave all these, what we call as flags, I'll leave them all to yes. Actually, I'm going to say include fee is not necessary because that's something we can really only properly use with fixed price. So I'm going to say this is open for time, expense, and materials. And with materials, that's one of the latest features that is non-stocked. So we do not have stock materials in project operations yet. It is non-stocked materials. So now that I've said that I'm doing a fixed price delivery, we actually need to create a project. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create one really quickly here and then refine it by navigating to the project later. So I'm just going to create or click on the lookup and create a new project quickly, FO for A Lorem, and I'm just going to give it a estimated start date of today, and it looks fine. And I'll just save and close out here. So basically, with this specific setup that I've done, I have an order with for the time and material order line and a project tied to that. I could begin delivery and invoicing against a project called F&O for A Lorem, which is more just that it's not really more than a container right now because we don't have anything defined on it. But theoretically, I could start logging time entries and invoicing them for this project. So how is my sales prices defined then? How would I, if I submit my time entries, how would they be priced? That's a good question. So those time entries would be, please wait while save is complete. Let's navigate back. Maybe it's done. So on our order, we have something called a project price list. And that project price list it's specific to an order. It's just, it comes from what we'd say a default price list. So I've created something on the Dataverse side that has basic prices. The contract, the order that we have here takes that price list and makes it unique, copies it and makes it unique for this order. One option is that I could have it unique to a customer. At that point, I usually tell customers, if you have 500 clients, would you like to maintain 500 price lists for your own customers? Usually they say no, and I say maybe it's best to have a order specific price list if your rates change. All right, so with that, we have that concept of an order all set up. So now we can look at our project. So who's actually going to work on that project? And we'll get there by choosing projects in the sitemap and then clicking on here on the A Lorem project. So here, we see some basic information that we really don't have to dive deeper to right now. But let's say we want to create a really, really simple project plan. It's an F&O implementation that we're going to do in a couple of days with just a few tasks. So maybe the topic's not the best name, but maybe you guys will get the idea. So what happens here when I hop over to task is I see a UI that looks totally different. And this is usually where someone who sees these, this business application for the first time is like, you know what? So far I've seen 3 UIs. I've seen F&O, I've seen that model-driven Power App, and now you're showing me a Fluent UI React thingy, beautiful, looks like consumer grade. What's going on here? So that's the thing. We really have 3 different UIs. We have F&O, model-driven, and we have Project for the Web. So this is Project for the Web infused into project operations. You can buy Project for the Web standalone, but in project operations, it's infused into project operations. So I'm just going to create a couple of quick tasks. Like, let's say task 1 is for definitions, and I'll just add a start and an end, finish date and an effort here, and I'll create a new task T2 implement. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to choose a start date for the 31st to, let's say, 31st to Friday, and the implementation task will start next week when I'm on vacation, so someone else can actually do it. So it'll be from the 5th to the 9th. And now I really have a couple of different ways of assigning people, on this project. And if we had more time, I could go through the whole thing. And Kayla and Julia, do give me that 10 or 15 minute heads up so that I know how much I got time to cover.
10 minutes.
10 minutes, perfect. Got plenty of time. So we have actually 2 different ways of assigning people on our tasks and our projects. We have 2 different concepts. We have a concept of booking people, and that concept of booking people means that what we would do here is we would generate what's known as a generic requirement or generic resource, and we would give that generic resource a role. Let's say it's just consultant, and then to actually get someone on this project, we would look at our project team. So I'm going to hop here on to another tab called Team, where I can see that generic resource. Now, what I could do is I could create what's known as a resource requirement. And against that resource requirement, I could look for different resources that we have, that we have in our organization. So, and for different, with different proficiencies, proficiencies in consulting, do they have certificates, whatever is kind of defined on this requirement for this for this specific role. So that's the way of approaching staffing our projects through bookings. So we have a requirement, we look for people that are available in our organization, and we book them on a project. And I'm going to say this once more. We book them on a project. So we book them on this project right here. That does not mean that we have them assigned for a task. And that's the second concept in project operations when it comes to bookings. When we've booked a resource and we have, a resource on a project, on our project team, we then need to define some work for that resource. So we have to tell them, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Consultant, now that you're on this project, here are actually the tasks that you should do. So for the sake of brevity, I'm going to skip through that booking process. It fires up the schedule board, and we could see a nice list of resources, which in this case will be just me, because I just set up this T2 2 days ago. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to directly assign myself on a task. And that would now indicate that, hey, I am actually on this project on an implementation task for 5 days from this start date to this finish date with an effort of with a total effort of 40 hours. So how would I know that I'm on this task? Frequent question in projects. Anyway, frequent question in projects. You know, Power BI would be the best way of being able to tell people what they should really work on. I hate the fact that some people send emails. Hey, you've been assigned on a task. I don't want an email for that. I want a nice list, like a Power BI visual that gives, shows me what is my work. So Power BI has a huge role in project operations implementations. It has a huge role because, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of analytics and we don't have a lot of analytics out of the box. So it's a bit hard to get insights out of the data that we have in the system. All right, but with that, because I probably have about 5 minutes now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create some time entries. So what we did first is we created that project. Hey, we sold an F&O implementation to a LORM. And we then created that project, a very short project plan where we assigned myself on that project. And now let's imagine that it's time to deliver. And I've actually had some of those implementation workshops with my customer, and I'm now logging time entries for them. So I've done my work and I'm going to log time. And I'm going to say, let's put 2 hours for today for that specific project that I'm on. And let's search for that task that I was on. So that implementation project task. My role is PM for this, and that's just fine. And we'll disregard the comments. And what I'll do is, after I've submitted my time, I will submit it for approval. So now a project manager, usually a project manager, would go in and they would approve the time entries that consultants have logged. And that would happen again in the model-driven app through an approvals table. So we can see that we have those 2 time entries that I submitted for approval. What I'll do is I'll just approve them. And this is, a lot of times, this is it for that consultant and that PM. The next step is actually to invoice those time entries. So this is always an interesting discussion. Does the role of a PM or a PM stop here, or does it continue from here? Now, in my experience, a lot of times PMs actually handle invoicing as well. So this would be relevant in many cases. In my experience, this is relevant for PMs. What happens next? So next, what we'll do is we'll do what's known as backlog grooming. So we'll set the time entries that we've approved as ready for being invoiced so that we can create that financial data in the background that we can pull on an invoice. So we're grooming our backlog. And as that backlog is groomed, so what I did is I selected that record and pressed ready to invoice. What happens next is that actual invoicing. Now that actual invoicing can occur through you can say as a batch job, like F&O, like same idea, through a batch job every X or Y days, or we can create that invoice manually. So what I'm going to do is actually create that manually because I don't have that batch job running and we don't want to wait for it. So I'm hopping on that project contract. And on that project contract, I am pressing a button that says create invoice. And what happens is the ProjOps model driven will navigate us to a Performa invoice. It doesn't say Performa anywhere, but that's what it's called officially by Microsoft. It creates a Performa invoice. And as I confirm that Performa invoice for $400, it don't have any applied advances and retainers. There's no not to exceed limit that we would have had to look at. I have a single customer that I'm invoicing, so I'm not doing split billing. What I can do is confirm that Performa, it's ready. go ahead, process it, and perhaps this is the end of that, end of that routine that a project manager would do, because the next step is, Ludwig, go ahead, buddy, ask a question, fire away. I just saw that you have a hand up.
Yeah. So my question is basically these project operations from a sizing perspective. Is this something you would run for a company that has a couple of thousand employees and that run projects for really many customers? So I mean, really for large companies, is that project operations able to handle that? That's
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a few thousand. It should be able to handle that. How many global projects are there for companies that have 2,000 seats? I honestly don't know. I know what Microsoft's biggest implementation is, and that's in PSA. We're recording, so I'm not going to mention that by name, even though it's not a secret. But yeah, I mean, it can handle 2,000. What's the sweet spot? And this is just, again, my personal opinion. The sweet spot for a light deployment is anywhere from 20 to 100, or maybe 150 seats. Sweet spot for integrated, I think that depends on what you would actually consider a sweet spot for a finance implementation. So 100 is a bit small for finance. I think 200 can be a bit small for finance. If you have 3, 4, 500, then that's probably a nice fit for finance, and that's definitely a nice fit for project operations as well. It can definitely handle 1, 2, 3,000. If we would have more than 10,000 seats, we'd have the product group in that project with us. So we definitely, it would be an interesting situation. I am running out of time, so I'm going to show F&O first. So this is, the Performa invoice is what I usually consider, and what I've seen is sort of the end of the process for a project manager. And from this is where that F&O project accountant role really kicks in. And what I need to do next in F&O to actually create that actual invoice from that Performa invoice is to hop on something that's called a project operations integration journal. So the data that we just created, the financial data that we just created in on the Dataverse side, is now transferred to a staging table. And from that staging table in F&O, from that staging table, it becomes an integration journal with lines that reflect the work, the financial data that we just did. So we have 2 hours with a unit cost of 100 per hour, and a sales component, unbilled sales component with 200 hours, $200 per hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to add any sales tax groups or anything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to post this integration journal. And the way we get it from the staging table is by a batch job, and I have a batch job that runs every 1 minute. So this is either fast or it takes a few minutes. Usually it is fairly fast. It should clear in less than 30 seconds. I hope it doesn't error out. I shouldn't have made any changes to my configuration, so it's always, the longer it takes, the more worried I get.
So just while we're doing that, just so I can add a bit more context to your conversation, Ludwig, because you will know when it comes to the core PMA, I've seen programs that had 18,000 seats, but I suppose the conversations about dual write and the capacity for the PSA side to how much that can flex to it. But the core PMA stuff, that can be used to significant volumes.
Yeah. So I mean, I've had these. Let me come back to this really quick because I love this topic. So now that I posted the integration journal, I'm actually at the end. So we want to send that actual invoice out next. So if we hop over to project invoice proposals in F&O, we'll see a project invoice. The header will get updated with what we posted anytime now. So it'll get that. Yeah, you saw it. So it changed from 0 to 400, and we can now post that project invoice proposal, and it'll now become a project invoice. And from really from here on, it's you kind of, it's all about that Dynamics 365 finance afterwards. So you play with your ledgers and do whatever magic you need to do. So that's the end of the invoicing process. And if I just quickly show the project invoices, we can see the invoice here. So how much can this handle? I don't think there's a single implementation in the world, speculating, that is for 18,000. The largest that I know of is X1,000 for PSA. Dual write can handle it, but I have had those discussions where I've asked that if we have 100,000 time entries to approve on a Friday, in a time zone variance of, let's say, 3 time zones, what's going to happen? And I don't think the product group's done any testing for genuinely for volumes of hundreds of thousands. So I mean, I honestly don't know, but for like 18,000, but all I can, I guess, say is I believe that it works, but I'm waiting for that project where I'd have that many seats. Lane.
Yes,
Hello.
sorry. Can I see the voucher on the one you just posted, just to see what does it do with the sales tax and the financial dimensions?
You know what? This is Contoso demo data, so I don't even know how it's set up in the Contoso demo data. I've definitely not set this up myself.
But you can get financial dimensions in there, or how do you do that?
You absolutely can. So all of these transactions you can set up to work with your standard. So you can see here you've got your setup for your ledger accounts. So all of this, that's where you talk about the core PMA functionality. So that's part of that project setup. So when you're creating your instigating project, you can set up your standard dimensions that you want your transactions to go against.
Yep. And if we look at some of the, and I've not done any dimension setups for my projects. For demo purposes, it's actually seldom relevant for me. So if I go to default accounting, I can set some general, like some dimensions right here, but if you're kind of looking, and you might from using classic PMA, you might be thinking, hey, I'll just open up that project and kind of do some setup there. And this is what I mentioned. If you click on that project ID and project operations, it actually takes you to that project on the model driven side. And this, as you can see, this has you're not able to set any dimensions on the model driven side for a project. And the same is with your orders. So if you click on your order, it'll take you to the order that I just actually created. So what we have under default accounting is really, for example, for our projects, what we get.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to that, you can default dimensions. Say, for example, on your customer, you still have that ability, and tax still works in the same way. So whatever we've preset, so that those capabilities just still sit within an F&O. And I think where Antti's just shown you there, this is where, I mean, you would do it at an individual level. So as you're viewing your transactions, you would come and populate whatever dimensions. But in many cases, you would want to almost default against your customer, say, as an example. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are some of the things that the experience or the UI, how we do things have changed slightly. There are definitely some nuances that we're work differently. I think the biggest difference is in integrated is definitely the way we have to approach the entire platform from an architecture point of view. And just as a quick example, what I mean by that is, if you would be doing, for example, a project where you would be using field service and you'd be integrating field service with F&O, a lot of those implementations use classic PMA and that concept of project as a means of building that integration, because field service doesn't have an integration that would do the same as we did here. So you can't just create an invoice and invoice that in F&O the way project operations is built. So with this setup of project operations, you would actually now need to rethink your field service implementation. And I know that field service is getting it's following in project operations footsteps, but really the architecture, overall architecture is probably the biggest thing that you would need to consider, because this changes how we work in F&O and this changes how we work in Dataverse, and it definitely changes the overall architecture. I am probably out of time, like several minutes ago, so this is a really short, efficient walkthrough, and reach out to me if you guys have any questions. Always happy to hop on a call or dissect any problems you guys have.
Yeah, to be fair, we let you get away with it because this topic is amazing and we know there just isn't enough time. EY is bringing the official ninja into the game as well. Look, he is on a roll today.
Thank you very much, Antti.
But yeah, so let's move on now from the amazing Antti. And like everyone said, we've tagged Antti in all of the posts. The video will be up. So make sure you follow him. If you have any messages, let him know. And if you struggle to find it, let us know and we will point you to Antti anyway, because he is literally the guy who knows the most about all of this, which is why I basically blackmailed him to come and talk to you all today. So Linus, if you are still there, hopefully, are you ready to share your screen?
Yeah, sure. 1 second, Kayla.
No, thank you very much, Antti. That was amazing. Yeah, we can see you.
Okay, super.
Thanks, Linus.
So my topic today is about Business Central overview. So this will be a high-level overview of Business Central, but more from the technical point of view, not from the functional point of view. And a little bit about me. So I'm an IT professional with 10 years experience in European implementation projects, mainly in Business Central and NAV world. I have an extensive experience in NAV upgrades because it was my first job, and for the first 3 years I was focusing on NAV upgrades, developing tools to automate upgrades. Also worked as a CFMD lead engineer, so this is where I was validating third-party or vertical solutions to make sure that they are compliant based on Microsoft recommendations and best practices for Business Central and NAV. And well, not Business Central, but only NAV. Business Central has now a different approach on validating vertical solutions. And I work at a company called Tiski. I've been with Tiski for almost 5 years, and also recently started working with F&O. So I'm becoming one of you guys as well. So today's agenda is where I would like to have a quick, brief history of Navision or Business Central, because I think it's really interesting how Navision or Business Central got to this specific stage where we are now in almost 40 years. Then we'll have a quick overview of Business Central architecture, main Business Central administration tools, and how we do Business Central development. And yeah, so everything started it's really interesting because it started in 1983 when 3 students in Denmark Copenhagen Technological University, founded a company, PCNC, Personal Computing and Consultancy. And a year later, in 1984, they developed PC Plus accounting system. It was a character-based type system, and this is the screenshot of that software. And it was focused and aimed for Norway and Denmark markets, small, medium businesses or home-based businesses. And it was a huge hit. This is a couple screenshots that I found from the computer world, where on the left-hand side, I think it was in 1985, if I'm not mistaken. The first article says that 117 employees is just a start. It's just, and on the right-hand side, another article says that the current most hot present that or gift that accountants would like to get for Christmas is PC Plus. Yeah, and then in 1987, another PC Plus Navigator was released, and this was a multi-user system, so it used server and client-based environments. So users could access the system through LAN network and work with a system. And then in 1989, the first Navision Navigator was created, was developed. And this was a real game changer because it allowed companies to customize solution fully. So many companies started building various add-ons or customizations, and new vertical solutions were developed. And this is where also it's quite interesting because some of the Navision models were Navision purchased them from other companies who developed them as vertical solutions. So they became as a part of standard Navision system. Yeah, it was one of the reasons why Navision got really popular, was the ability to easily extend the solution and customize it for the business needs. And this is a screenshot of Navision Financials. This was released in 1995. So this was the first Navision version that was fully compatible with Windows 95. And in 1999, Navision software went public IPO in Copenhagen Stock Exchange. And in 2000, November, there was an interesting event, or Navision merged with Demgard. Demgard was the company who had Exapta as a product. So these two companies merged, and it was a huge shock for most of the people because they saw these companies as harsh competitors. And in 2002, Microsoft purchased Navision, I think for around $2 billion. And people said that they saw that coming, but they were surprised by the price that Microsoft paid for the software. And this is Navision 2009 version, and this is Navision 2013. This is when we got the thin layer client, so we finally got the system that is three-tier with a three-tier architecture based. This is Navision NAV 2018, and here we get to the Business Central SaaS. The core modules that we have in Business Central are, we have financial management, of course. We have sales and marketing. We have a small CRM module in Business Central, so we can create leads. We can have marketing campaigns. We have purchasing, warehouse, and manufacturing modules. Both of these, some of these modules were, as I mentioned, warehousing and manufacturing. I think they were purchased from other companies, and then they were embedded into Navision. We have jobs module, which is basically like a project based type module for project management. We have resource planning, services module, which is more for like a maintenance type businesses where companies are, say, fixing TVs or also contract based businesses. And yeah, and we also have human resources module. A quick overview of BC SaaS licensing. We have 4 main licenses. We have Essential, Premium, Team Member, and External Accountant. The key difference between Essential and Premium licenses are that with a Premium license, we get everything what we have in the Essential license, but we also get manufacturing and services module. So basically, if we have a customer who needs to use manufacturing module, they need to have Premium license. And also an interesting fact is that we cannot have a mixed approach. So we cannot have 20 Essential user licenses and 5 Premium licenses. So if we want to have 5 users who need to access manufacturing module, that wouldn't work. So basically, either we have all of the licenses, Premium licenses, or this is the option, the only option if we want to use manufacturing module in Business Central. Well, of course, we have Team Member license. This is one of the cheapest license, and it allows to, it's mainly like a read-only license, but with some additional permissions to modify master data, I think create sales codes, and some other documents. And we have an External Accountant license. So this is the license that we get for free. If we use Essential licensing, we get 1 External Accountant for free. And if we use Premium license types, we get 3 External Accountants. So basically, this is a license that we can assign to an accountant who needs to access Business Central, but is not a part of organization. So we can send an invite by email, and then user can access by having External Accountant license signed. This is about licensing, and I think and this is where I have a BC high-level architecture of the main components that Business Central has. We have web client and app or tablet app type clients that are connecting to web server. Of course, it's IIS, as it's Microsoft product, but we also have Business Central server. So it's not specifically a machine server. It's a Business Central server running as a service. And the common practice is to have multiple servers. So we can have one server for handling UI client requests. Another server could be used for APIs or integration requests. And for instance, a third server commonly is created to handle job queues or scheduled operations to process them. And of course, it can be split by multiple VMs or by multiple physical machines. We have also development environment that is connecting to the server when we are publishing customizations or extensions. And also administration tools are accessing the server directly when we need to modify certain settings on the server, and of course SQL Server database. It can be either regular on-prem SQL Server or Azure SQL Server. This is a high-level architecture of OBC on-prem, but of course SaaS is slightly different. But the key concepts or key components are the same. So what I wanted to show you is the BC SaaS administration. So this is something similar like what we have LCS for F&O, but it still lacks certain features. So Microsoft is constantly improving, adding new features and updating environments. And with so basically, we can access Admin Center by specifying Business Central tenant ID and admin with a certain permissions, and we can access and then we can handle environments. So I forgot to mention that in terms of licensing, we don't have minimum quota for licensing. So customer can purchase 1 Essential license and that's it, and they can start using Business Central environments. They can create production and sandbox environments. And we get 1 production environment and three sandbox environments for free. If we need to create more environments, there's a separate charge and cost for that. One of the reasons why we might need to create, or we sometimes create multiple production environments, is localization. So Business Central is Business Central instance is tied to specific localization. So we cannot have a production instance that would have both, for instance, GB localization and Danish localization. So that's a bit of a problem. So in these cases, we have two options: either to move development or all of the localization customizations to one environment, but that of course involves a lot of development, and maintenance is not easy to do, especially when we have laws constantly changing. So in that case, we create separate production environments. And of course, separate production environments, it's a separate instance of the system. So let's say if we have 3 companies, one is with Finnish localization, another is with Danish localization, and a third is with a GB localization, we would create 3 different production environments, and then some of the problems then what we need to resolve is master data synchronization, for instance, where if we want to have the same customers and vendors in all of these 3 systems, this becomes an integration project. I can show you how we can quickly create a new sandbox. It usually takes like 5 minutes for new sandbox environment to be created, and we use sandbox for system testing or UAT or development. So we can just click on new. Okay, let's refresh the session. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, okay. So we can set, so in this case, we're not creating production environment, we are creating a sandbox environment. And we can call it, for instance, UAT phase 4. And we have a couple options. We can either create an environment that has like blank data system, like a demo database, like Kronos database. Kronos database is Kronos company is the demo company, similar to Contoso company in F&O. Or we have another option that instead of creating blank company or blank environment, we can copy environment from production. So then we'll have all of the data, all of the customizations in the sandbox. And yeah, that's it. Quickly create, and then it takes usually up to 5 minutes, and we get another sandbox environment created. So updating environments is really quick and easy. So when we need to update, for instance, UAT environments with the fresh data, it's not a problem to do. And it doesn't impact timelines on the project, as it basically 5-10 minutes, 15 minutes to create a new environment. When we go to, we can have a look to some details on what we can do with the production environment. We can define our own application insights key. So this is where we would get all of the logs sent to. Or another option is just to use generic telemetry that Microsoft uses for Business Central. The key thing is that with this specific out-of-the-box telemetry, we don't have much information emitted from Business Central, so it's better to define a separate application insights key to use it to because in that case, Business Central then emits even smart telemetry like long-running SQL statements that we can use for analysis, and also it's really easy to implement and to send custom logs to application insights. So for instance, if we have a customization where we want to track, it's useful for APIs usually, where we can track like what data went or when we call the specific API, we could use that. We can track which extensions or apps are installed in the system. We can check user sessions and cancel them. We have an option to export database, and a database will be exported to Azure Blob Storage. In some cases, yeah, and I think we're limited to 10 exports per month. Yeah, we can create a new support request or report production outage. and the reaction times on the report production outage I mean, they're extremely good. So it takes like 1 minute or up to 5 minutes to get almost an email from Microsoft support team that they're looking into the issue. And I remember on one of the conferences, Microsoft was saying to be cautious not to use it for stuff that is not blocking Business Central production system, because as soon as we report a production outage, yeah, it could be that someone will be, if they're sleeping, they'll be woken up. Yeah, we can, Business Central has automated updates, and we have them once per month. Also, we have major updates twice per year. So for major updates, we can configure the date and window when we would like the system to be upgraded. We also are limited, so Microsoft forces to implement upgrades in 3 months after they release a new version. So we cannot postpone it for a year or 2 years. We have our systems constantly updated. We can restore database to a specific point in time from the backups that Microsoft is creating for the production database, and of course we can rename environments. And yeah, and yeah, we can have a look. Yeah, here we can see that state is active for UAT phase 4. So if I click on this environment and this URL link, here we can access Business Central now. That is now a copy of production. Of course, when we're creating sandbox environments, we automatically have APIs turned off, so that we wouldn't have data inconsistencies because we're taking a copy of production environment. So we want to make sure that yeah, we're not updating data if we have Business Central integrated with another system. Yeah, also one interesting thing about database capacity. So we get 80 gigabytes for free for all of the environments, and then we get additional 1 gigabyte storage per user license. And also, if we need more disk space, well, not but database space, we can purchase additional gigabyte. I think it's $10 per gigabyte. And if we want to purchase in bulk, I think it's $500 for 1,000 gigabytes. Of course, also Microsoft is using, it is automatically compressing database tables in Business Central to make sure that we don't, we have enough disk space. Yeah, so this is at the Business Central Admin Center. Another interesting, yeah, so I can show you now how, second, yeah, what are our main tools that we use for Business Central development. So we use Visual Studio Code as the default editor, and we have an AL compiler that we install as an extension in Visual Studio Code to compile Business Central code. We have 2 options how we can do development. We can either do development directly to SaaS sandboxes that we just created, or we can use containers or Docker containers. And the more preferred option is to use Docker containers. So each developer has its own VM where we use Dockers with a specific PowerShell library that Microsoft created for us called BC Container Helper. and using this, we can easily spin up new development containers that we can use for development or testing. The default source code control for Business Central is Git. Microsoft is using Git for Business Central, and most of the customers and the MVPs and partners are using Git by default for Business Central. Of course, we can use other source code control management systems, but Git is the preferred option. We also use Azure DevOps, and for multiple reasons. One of the reasons is we can use pipelines to automated deployments, unit testing, and builds for Business Central. We have many Visual Studio Code extensions developed by partners or other companies to help with Business Central development, because we don't have any UI or wizard type-based tools from Microsoft. Everything is done in code without specific UI editors. And we can have two types of reports in Business Central. We can either have a Word type layout reports or RDLC reports, and of course we use SSRS for that. So we can have a quick look how Business Central Docker looks like and how we use it. So here I have a new VM, and I've already installed a couple Docker instances here. So we have 3 different Docker instances, 3 different containers. But let's say I want to create a new one that I need to spin up a new Docker container for development. Let's say my project is NHS. So here we specify the specific Business Central version we want to use for our container. We specify localization. As I've mentioned, Business Central basically can have only one localization per environment. So we would use GB localization. And here we can define the container name that we'll create now. So we can call it NHS v1. And now we can run the script. And this script is based on, as I've mentioned, BC Container Helper library that Microsoft developed with lots of various functions that we can use for container management. Let's run the script. And it's interesting with the BC Container Helper libraries that it is downloading artifacts, so it's not downloading full image every time we request a new Docker image. So for instance, if we are accessing now or GB localization 18.2, if we already had downloaded GB localization 18.1, BC Container Helper library would check which specific or different files or installation files it needs to download to speed up the process. So it's not downloading full image every time we're downloading a new container image. While it's downloading and installing new Docker container, we can have a look at one of also quite interesting concept that Business Central has, and also it was with Navision originally. So this is Visual Studio Code, the default editor that we use for Business Central development. And so we have different types of objects that we can have in Business Central, but one of them is, you can notice that we have ID numbers. So so the idea is that we can have ID numbers for every object has to have an ID number assigned, and Microsoft, by using ID numbers, are controlling which extensions or which type of code we can upload to the environment. So for instance, Microsoft uses specific object range for its objects, for its code, and for all of the objects, while customizations, for tenant customizations, we have a range that we can use from 50,000 to 100,000. So basically, by using object, and then when we are deploying extension to Online Sandbox, we have validation on object IDs. And if we have an object ID that is not in the range, we will get an error message. So we will not be able to publish an extension. And the same is for vertical add-ons or vertical solutions, ISV solutions, where ISV solution would get a reserved object range from Microsoft, and then they would use that object range to build the systems, to build customizations in that range. So basically, object IDs are used to handle separate customizations. And it's also an interesting thing because it's not relevant with BC SaaS anymore, but it's still relevant to BC on-prem and Navision or older Nav versions. That customer had to pay for object IDs and object ranges. So basically, if we wanted to add, let's say, 10 new tables to the system, 10 new SQL tables as a customization, customer would have to pay Microsoft to have an ability to create these tables. And same with code units. Code units is like a class in X++. So this is about object IDs. And while we have Docker being installed, we can have a look to another concept on the database level that Business Central has. It's on the database table level. So the idea is that each Business Central legal entity has its own set of SQL tables. So the default, the base app of Business Central has around 1,700 tables. And whenever we create a new legal entity, we get a new set of tables created per legal entity. So for instance, in this case, we can see that we have a legal entity which is Kronos UK Limited. And here after the $, we have the specific table name. So if I would create a new legal entity, let's say Kronos UK Limited 2, Business Central would create me another table called Kronos UK Limited 2 $, and then the specific table name. So we can end up in a situation where if we have, let's say, 20 companies, we'll have about 40,000 database tables in the system. So for instance, if I scroll down, here I have another company called Kronos 1. So if I have a look to, let's say, here we have a table called activity, Kronos UK Limited activity. So if I scroll down to Kronos 1, here I have the same table. So if we make a customization in Business Central, let's say because these tables, they are based on the same table schema. So if I add a new field to one of these tables as a customization, Business Central would update all tables that we modified. So if I add a new field to activity table, Business Central would synchronize schema for all activity tables in all of the legal entities. So this is probably one of the reasons why it was developed in this way and why it has such an architecture is to resolve performance issues and also table locking issues. So if we have heavily used table in one of the legal entities, for instance, if someone is posting a 50,000 line journal, then we're sure that even if this table will be locked, journal line table, it will not affect any of other legal entities in the system because they use a separate set of tables. Also, from the performance point of view, it's in a sense it's like a sharding technology that databases have for large data sets, where they create separate tables for a specific data sets. So, for instance, for a phone number, we could have a table that contains all of the phone numbers that starts only with number 0, and we could have another table that would contain all of the records that start with a number 1. But of course, it creates some other problems because if we use Power BI to connect directly to the database, and if we create a new legal entity, it becomes more complex to maintain reports in the system. Power BI report. Okay. Also, to mention another thing about Business Central tables is that they are denormalized, so we have data duplication in multiple tables. So table schemas are not don't have normalization forms applied, which it's both pros and cons, of course, because it's easier to do development because we can find data automatically and replicated in multiple tables. But of course, there are other issues then with the data. Data like maintenance, if we want to make sure that if we change data on one specific setup table, that it updates other tables as well.
So I'm just warning you, very close to time. So
Yep.
I wanted to open up just to see if you have questions, because I know I have learned a lot. But I just wanted to give everyone an opportunity to ask any questions about everything we have literally just learned. I can't believe you used to have to pay for extensions though. That blew my brain a bit.
Yeah, it was a very strange concept when I first time heard that. I was really surprised. And we had also some weird situations in the past where, for instance, customer would be a bit cheap on purchasing new objects. So then we would try to reuse existing objects, and of course then it creates an architecture issues in the code. If we try to push more code in the classes where we shouldn't have that code. But
you know, from what I've heard though, SAP is the same. SAP make you pay for customizations as well as environment deployment. So
okay.
You know. So to anyone in the audience who has any questions, feel free to unmute or raise your hand and say hello. And just to, I suppose to you, Linus, is there anything else you definitely have to tell us? Or are we nearly there?
Yeah, I think we're nearly there. I can just show you how, yeah, we here we have a VC container deployed now, and what happens after we deploy the VC container, we have automatically URL links and ports generated to access that container. And if I click now on this link, I can immediately access a new Business Central container. And we can have as many containers as we want on the VM with the different localizations used for different projects, for instance. So if I also the VC development language is quite forgot to mention, it's quite similar to Pascal type language. I think it's also because of the historical reasons. When NAV was developed in the 1990s, Pascal was extremely popular programming language, so it was taught at all schools, universities, and it could be that it was also part of the success of Navision that people already had some experience with programming, and we had a situation where non-technical people could start doing customizations in the system. It's more difficult now with the Business Central. It's now more technical, but with older Navision versions or NAV versions, yeah, we had situations where consultants could customize the system, and some of them became developers.
That sounds a bit like a war zone to me as a technical person, though, to just turn up and down customer side you. They've done like a mass amount of customizations you never knew about.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so I think, yeah, Kayla showed, I think, everything what wanted to show. I mean, I can just show that it's really easy to deploy a new extension. So in this case, I just added a new field to the customer list and customer table. So there's like a launch JSON file where I can configure which Docker I want to use. Sorry, I had auto shutdown configured on the VM.
No, don't worry. Don't worry.
But the idea is just if we click Control F5 to deploy extension, it takes like 30 seconds to have it deployed to the Docker. Yeah. Do you have any questions, anyone?
No. So I think it's because we're getting to time. So usually we only have the ERP UG go for an hour and a half, and we are absolutely maxing out. That session was amazing though, and double kudos because you don't even sound like you're poorly, and we all know that actually you're suffering, bless you. So absolutely thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Showing us that session.
Thank you.
So everyone else, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the close down slide so you know what's coming next week. And then if anyone does want to stay, because I know Mizelle, for example, she's let us know that she has to run parental duties, things like that. You can stay on and we will still talk about our favourite features, things like that, which will just be an open forum. So let me go back to sharing my screen. So this is what we are doing next week. So I don't know, some people know, some people don't know. There's a huge announcement tomorrow for human resources. It's all about the roadmap. So what we've actually got, we've got Claire Purdy, who, to be honest, anyone who knows Microsoft Human Resources, they know Claire, she's amazing. She has said she will join us and she'll do a full walkthrough of everything that's happening. So the announcement is due to come out tomorrow. Whether they're on time or not, we know Microsoft, maybe not. But the end of the month on the 22nd, Claire will be on talking about the announcement, the impact, the roadmap, what to do if you're a customer who's impacted, if you have customers who are impacted, or if you're just a partner saying, how am I meant to deal with this? That's everything that we'll be talking about. Then we've got Alex Anderson coming on. She's going to talk everything at Viva, because what we already know is Microsoft are really going into the end-to-end employee management and life cycle and how to do that end-to-end well-being. So we're going to have a session talking about Viva, licensing, what functionality that brings and how that links into the rest of the human resources offerings. And then we're doing a proper panel, right? Because they keep changing the world. They keep breaking the world. So we're going to do it like we are after today. We're going to make an open forum where everyone can just have a chat about how do they feel? What do they think? Claire's going to stay around. Alex is going to stay around. We're going to stay around. And we're just all going to talk about it because there's been a lot that's changing in the last 3 years. We had the attract and onboard changes. We had the movement to the app change. It keeps changing. So we just want to talk about it. And then maybe we'll tell Microsoft what we think. We'll just send them a link to the product group. So that is what's coming. And just to nudge everyone, all of the social stuff, any session requests, any session feedback, just let us know. We'll post all the links on the LinkedIn page and on the Twitter page anyway, so don't worry too much now. But make sure just to let us know. And if you do want to present or you do want a topic, come on. We like everyone today. We tend to volunteer people if no one volunteers themselves. So be warned, because we do know who you are. But more than that, yeah, everyone chuck on your cameras, unmute yourself, and I'm going to do a nomination actually of Julia, because I know she prepared for this, of what one of her favourite features is.
I would have to say asset leasing. Oh, don't do that. The whole damn module. Was probably where I should have I should stop recording on that front before I said that. Okay, so as a FinOps person, as a finance FinOps person, it was always really embarrassing going up to clients and they would be like, what do we do about asset leasing? And my response was, you have to do it outside the system and import the journals. And that was embarrassing. It was super embarrassing because asset leasing came out in 2019 as a compulsory thing. And they told us years beforehand that it was coming out. Microsoft didn't do anything. But so yes, that one for me is been my favorite feature over this year. Very much asset leasing. How about yourself, Kayla?
Oh, okay. So I'm going to say something controversial, actually, and it is definitely in an element of sarcasm. The data lake functionality, right? When it was released, when it was notified, let me think when it was. I'm pretty sure it was in sort of late 2017, actually, when it was actually first released. Late 2017, October 2017, they said, yes, data lake functionality, brilliant. You can export your data into a really cheap storage facility, brilliant. Then we all deployed it and it broke everything reporting. All of the Power BI gone. Then they said, yeah, but it'll come in GA in like 6 months and we'd have fixed it. And then it was a year, and it was 18 months, and it's still not actually in GA today because it still breaks everything, so we still can't use it for half the customers, but some customers are already live on it and they can't undo it because you can't switch it off once you switch it on. Absolutely genius. So my favorite feature is the fact that it's actually getting there. It's actually much closer, it's much more stable, it's near real-time in trickle feed, but I'm still upset with it and I still don't like it because it still breaks my Power BI reports on my dashboards, my pretty sort of, you know, embedded Power BI.
Stuff that looks good.
Yeah, it's a bit love-hate, you know? When you go into a customer and you're saying, oh, look at all these standard reports, they love it. And then they say, oh, but actually I want my own custom Power BI reports near real time. You're like, great, okay, I'll switch on the data lake functionality. You can do that, you can have your enterprise reporting solution, but you have to sacrifice all of these pretty standard reports to do that. It's not good. Go on, Antti, you must have one.
In finance and operations.
Doesn't have to be finance and operations. You can do a project ops feature if you like.
No, it's I kind of like the it's a broad answer. I'm sort of somehow fascinated in a strange way, fascinated by the way that finances work. And I think it's more about, you know, not the technology, but actually the theory that's more relevant than the technology. You know, being someone who's not, you know, has zero accounting experience beyond college 101 in accounting, which sucked. So that thing is, I think, that's fascinating because it's like, I don't know it. I got no idea about it. And that's a huge area for personal growth. So.
Okay. Ludwig, you're still on. If you're still on, what was your favorite feature?
Of course. Electronic reporting.
Oh, I should have known. Oh, why did I know?
I can do everything. Everything
you can.
It
gave you the way to hack the system.
Exactly, yeah.
That one I should have known about.
It was the perfect answer for making tax digital and all like that. So do you know what? I love it as a techie person because I don't have to touch it. It's technical enough for functional people to be able to make all these crazy reports and things work without me having to work it out. So
our technical team have been very hands off on it. They're very much, oh no, that's a consultant thing now.
No, don't touch it. Don't know how to use it. Don't want to know how to use it. So absolutely, yeah, I agree with Ludwig on that one. I vote that one too.
We actually have a session request to do an intro and a bit of a dive into ER. So we'll have to schedule that one.
We do, yeah. I actually would be a little bit interested because I know it's used a massive amount. So it's a bit of a gap in my knowledge actually. So it's quite interesting.
Maybe something for Antti. Earned value management with electronic reporting. That would be funny.
I was going to say, actually, ironically, I can remember when me and Paul used to work together, he moaned at me for about 3-4 months about how to get it to work because he couldn't get it to work.
That's a good segue. Paul, what did you like? What have you liked? You're on mute, Paul.
You're muting,
Oh, there's always one. A little bit taken aback by that false defamatory statement.
No, it was not. It was when Making Tax Digital first came out and you wanted me to try and fix it and make it work, and it was not going to happen.
Yeah. Who wants to deal with that though, really? I just didn't want to deal with it. It's like, kick the can down the road. Probably because I'm looking at it a bit at the minute, but probably the business events framework.
That's true. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I think that just in itself, I don't think it's good. I think the opportunities that's created and more and I'm not working for Microsoft, but more to enable people to eat more aligned to the whole low code, no code power platform. I think it just creates a lot more opportunities to bring that in. So I think that's really wiped out a lot of areas of customization that would have been there before.
Well,
that's
it's
a good point, actually.
It's actually real-time integrations. Before that, you didn't have real-time interfaces. You just didn't. Business events does do that as well. So, it's brilliant. It's well overdue.
Yeah.
Right, I have noticed
Green Ninja
is asking to put a feature on the table. I think it's going to be.
Not quite a feature. I have a question, which is a general question, which is, does BC or FinOps have the ability to integrate with government tax office reporting for submissions?
FinOps has Making Tax digital integration. That's for the UK, and I believe there are certain European countries again that we have integration with the government portals as well.
Yeah.
So I know FinOps in the UK is a yes.
From my ignorance, that's where you use the electronic reporter, because you can get the information you need through it, and then you get to a nerd like me, and then we just send it where it needs to go.
It's fantastic. These days it's a little bit complicated to set up, but you get like your different URLs, your different things. It can all be done now with a consultant. You don't even need a techie person anymore. Sorry, Kayla.
Thank you. No, because I know the UK is moving towards digital submission only through software. You won't be able to do it through a front-end government portal. You're going to need software to do it. I was talking to an accountant the other day about some stuff, and he mentioned it to me. So I thought this would be the call to ask.
Just getting us to help you do your pre-sales, then, basically.
But yeah, no, it is fully compliant. It's one of these ones. It's a little bit of a bitch to set up. Savina, if she's still on the call, I know she's been having some fun with that of late.
Yeah, I don't think it's too bad, actually. It's you're right. Once you've got the setup there, and you have a sort of sandbox sort of HMRC portal that you can actually connect to, so you can even test your transactions, make sure that they actually upload to the HMRC portal. So you've got quite a lot there that you can actually work with.
Yeah. And Microsoft have really tried with helping with the documentation.
Can I just say one thing as well? And this is because it's such a sore point for me. This all works beautifully if you have legal entities and business units set up properly. If you are one of those people who tries to shove everything in a single legal entity because you think you're clever, it won't work.
That's so true. Dynamics is not designed for multi-tax reg, but they are working on that. So it's coming.
You can tell I've had that conversation a few times.
I can tell, yes, that sounds like a painful conversation. Savina, seeing as your camera's on, do you have a favourite thing that you like that's come out over the past year? Oh, she just turned hers off.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. It's not the past year, but one of the things I really like is Financial Reporter. I think it's probably because you can talk people out of having a sort of consolidation company, because you can use reporting trees. So I quite like that, and I think you can just do so much within Financial Reporter that, I don't know. I know Power BI is nice, it's visually more friendly, but from an accountant's point of view, you can get all your basic reports and you can configure quite a lot within Financial Reporter.
They've given us a lot of control. All we need to do is get Subledger in there, and now all accountants will be happy.
Yeah.
So, cool. Rightio. Does anybody have any other features they want to bring up?
Landed cost.
So
much easier.
Of course, I should have remembered that you were going to. Actually, no. To be fair, you're right. I'm so sorry. No, come back. Oh, there you are, Sam. Sam is our manufacturing and our warehousing and our data person. So, you keep on evolving, mate. You just keep on evolving.
Dog's body. But no, it's just so you can have transportation management, or you can have landed cost. I'll take landed cost every day of the week. And even if there's serious bugs with it, I'm like, yeah, it's just going to be so much easier to basically deal with.
Landed costs, for those who aren't in the know, are stuff for when freight and shipping, all those extra costs that come with purchasing something.
I don't even care about the cost element, to be honest. So I can see Ludwig's going to ask questions, etc. If that's about accounting, I don't care, but I just hate management.
What's your question, Ludwig?
Yeah, the question is, does anybody know a company that actually uses the cost accounting module?
No.
No, but I really want to see it used. It looks really interesting.
I would love for someone to give a user case for that, because I looked at it so many times, I cannot see it. I can't see why anyone would use it.
I can't either.
I'm just like, I've tried. I've really tried. I'm like, but
I know.
why would you do that? Why would you do that? All extra confident. There's got to be a reason for it. So I'd love to see someone come up with
It's missing the bar for me so much. There's just things I'm like, oh, you really don't understand.
So I do remember like a few years ago when they were talking about this, and one of the problems that we always had to manufacture, the one they rolled out, was the whole if you've got 100% scrap. So you're doing low volume manufacture, and it's just all scrap. And I remember them saying, well, we can't have it tied to inventory because it won't work for costing. I'm like, yep, totally cool. And we're going to do the single cost account to deal with it, just like that. I was like, brilliant, great. And then basically, as you say, I remember looking at the actual what they come up with and going, hold on, what? No, what? But yeah.
Yeah.
I've not known anyone to go down that path, if I'm honest. It just hasn't. It's missed the mark for me.
Can I say one thing actually that you've made me realise and remember though, how much we take for granted the data management framework now? I mean, can you not remember R3 and R2 doing anything to do with data migration or data import? I mean, it was like literally grinding your own teeth on, like, I don't even know. It was brutal. So actually, it's so easy now, even as part of general business processes, to safely import data into the system. It's just like we really take that for granted already. That has definitely got to be one of the top features at this point.
Yeah, even though it's like really old hat now, I really still love OData. It's kind of things that having a combination of having the business events and the OData, I basically just love it. It's just so much easier. Don't get me wrong, I get the performance things, but I love it. It's just so much better. Because I remember, it's just so much stuff you just couldn't do before that you can do at low volume, at least now.
I'm one of these people I tend to push for the very slight use cases and edge cases for OData. I think generally speaking, it should be avoided, but there are cases where it's needed. But generally, push the customer enough, it's not needed. It's just not needed. So.
I don't know. It just makes things so much easier, I think. But yeah, I don't know.
It makes life easy for us, doesn't it, Sam?
It really does. It really does. But yeah.
Right. Sorry, guys. I am going to have to leave. I am very sorry. I've been holding on this long. My bladder is too full. One of the downsides.
I think 20 minutes. So thank you everyone for sticking around and attending. Thank you, Paul, for volunteering or being voluntold.
Yes.
Good luck.
I kind of asked him.
Trying to grow a human is definitely a bigger task than I've ever had to do. So absolutely respecting that decision right there. And thank you, Antti and Linus, who I think has had to drop off. He is still here, for giving us an amazing session today. We could not convince ourselves that we had to stop you both because the topics were actually really, really interesting. So thank you, everyone, for an amazing day.
Thank you, guys. It's been fantastic. Thank you, Linus. Thank you, Antti.
Thank you.
Have a lovely night.
Thanks for organising. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, no.